Hi everyone, I'm Jessica, and this is going to be a short tutorial on how to approach the Vinyasa in your Vinyasa classes. And when I say the Vinyasa that I'm going to break down, I'm referring to the poses down dog to plank to Chaturanga to up dog, back to down dog. So that is that sequence of poses that we flow through pretty frequently in a Vinyasa practice. It's part of a sun salutation. And it's a series of poses that is not only difficult to learn, but it's difficult to teach. And if you've been going to Vinyasa classes, you'll probably notice that it's kind of cued sometimes rapidly, and it's not always explained. And that's just mainly because most teachers don't have time to break it down. They're assuming that you probably already have a working knowledge of those poses. So I'm going to give you a brief breakdown of how we flow through those poses and how we connect them to the breath. I've got Tucker here with me. I think he wants to help. I'm not sure if he can. He has very short little arms and legs, but we'll let him hang out regardless. So let's begin. I'm hoping that you're already a little bit warm if you're going through this. If you're not, maybe pause this and just roll through a couple of cat-cows, maybe a couple of down dog to planks, just to warm up the shoulders a little bit, okay? Okay, so we're gonna set up for our down dog. Make sure the fingers are spread really wide and the hands are at least shoulder width apart. We're gonna tuck the toes and float the hips for downward facing dog, okay? So the breath is really important with this, as it is through all of our aspects of Vinyasa. The movements are always connected with the breath. So I'll demonstrate the full Vinyasa first, and then we'll get into a little bit more detail. Inhale forward to plank pose. Exhale, bend the elbows, point them back, lower halfway down. Inhale, untuck the toes. Pull the heart forward for upward facing dog. Notice my thighs are off of the mat. On the exhale, lift the pit of the belly, roll over the toes, go back, downward facing dog. So again, inhale, plank pose. Exhale, lower halfway down, elbows point back. Inhale, pull the chest forward, lengthen the inner ankles, perhaps look up. Exhale, lift from the pit of the belly, roll over toes, go back, downward facing dog. So that's our sequence of poses in the Vinyasa. So probably the most difficult pose of that sequence to teach and to learn is Chaturanga. It is a tricep push-up, meaning that the elbows point to the back of the mat. They do not flare out like in a traditional push-up. The other part of that is that unlike the traditional push-up, we're not trying to get the chest as low as possible. We're only lowering halfway down so that the shoulder is never lower than the elbow. Once the shoulder is lower than the elbow, the shoulder is in extension and it's very loaded with weight. So that is an unstable, unsafe place to put the shoulder in, especially if we do that over and over again. So I try to stress to people in my classes, we want to be really careful about that Chaturanga because we're going through it so many times, and we want to protect our shoulders so that we can have a sustainable practice. So when you're lowering in that Chaturanga, make sure you don't drop the head, keep the chest really broad, and hug those elbows in. When you come through to upward facing dog, that back bend, that's when you untuck the toes and you broaden the chest, okay? And then in that transition to down dog, you're gonna engage the belly to help lift those hips as you roll over the toes and go back to down dog. Okay, so if you're newer to Vinyasa and you say, Chaturanga is really difficult, what should I do? That's a great question. There are ways that we can modify this. So I'll show you one way. We'll set up in our down dog. Again, hands shoulder width apart, fingers spread super wide, okay? Inhale forward to plank pose. This time on your exhale, you're going to release the knees down first, and you're going to lower all the way down to the mat. Hands are about mid-rib cage. You press the tops of the feet down, and you inhale, lift the head and the heart for Cobra pose. And then you exhale, release Cobra pose, and you press back to downward facing dog. So I'll show that option again. Inhale forward to plank pose. Exhale, release knees, release body all the way down, untuck the toes. Press tops of feet down, press pubic bone down. Inhale, lift the head and the heart, Cobra pose. Exhale, let that go. press back, downward facing dog. So that is a slightly more gentle option that still gives you the benefit of the vinyasa, but isn't as taxing on the shoulders, or it's not as demanding strength-wise. Another great thing you can do to work on your chaturanga is grab your block, and you'll notice that your block has 3 heights. It has a low height and a medium height and a high height. I want you to put it on medium height at the top of your mat so that it's going to end up being in between the hands, okay? So this is going to give us a way to practice our chaturangas. It's kind of a drill, okay? So you can do chaturanga push-ups from your knees or with the knees lifted. But what the block will do is it will help us get a feel for chaturanga where we're only lowering halfway down. So it's going to keep us honest by not letting that chest go too low, okay? So if your chest does touch that block, you know you've gone too low. So if you practice that a few times and you really get a feel for where that chaturanga is, it's going to help you incorporate that into your regular practice. I hope you found this helpful. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I also love working with people one-on-one, so I'm available for our private sessions if you want individual feedback and advice on how to approach this for your practice. Thank you and namaste.